A veteran's attic turns into a remarkable revelation through a dog's intuition. The air was thick with dust motes swirling lazily in the dull amber beam of a solitary attic bulb. David's breath painted fleeting clouds in the stale, musty space, each inhale tasting slightly of old paper and forgotten echoes. He knelt beside a battered wooden trunk, the faded leather buckle cracked and worn, fingers trembling as he lifted the lid, releasing a faint cascade of dust and memories. The box brimmed with yellowed photographs, edges curled, faces faded but frozen in moments long past. A trembling hand reached in, drawing out a single image. A younger David, squared shoulders clad in military green, eyes bright the weight of years and wounds yet to come absent from the frame. The stark contrast hit him like a punch to the gut, the distance between then and now swallowing the room whole. Behind him, Buddy, a lean dog with intelligent eyes shimmering amber in the dim light, shifted restlessly, nose twitching as if sensing the storm settling around his master's heart. A low woof urged David forward, a silent companion tethered across the chasms of memory. David traced the edges of the photo, thumbs brushing over the scratches, the laughter of a past life choking in his throat. The attic seemed to close in, shadows pressing from the corners, held back only by the weak bulb's glow and Buddy's gentle nudge. Suddenly, a soft thud, the photo slipped from his fingers, fluttering down like a wounded bird to the wooden floor. Dust erupted in a swirling haze as Buddy barked softly, a caution against retreat. David bent down slowly, heart pounding with a mixture of shame and the latent spark of something unnamed. "Not ready," he muttered, voice rough, strained. The silence that followed was thick, punctuated only by Buddy's rhythmic panting and the creak of the house settling with the evening chill. David's gaze wandered upward to the rafters, where beams crossed like the shadowed path of a tangled past. His eyes found an unfinished letter, pinned precariously to a nailed board above a brief exchange from a family argument, words sharp and raw, a fragile thread of a fractured kinship. His throat tightened. The last conversation with his daughter, the sharp edge of estrangement etched painfully in fresh memory. The double weight of rejection, by his family and by himself. Light flickered faintly, spilling a faint halo around the attic's cluttered corner. Buddy nudged again, steadfast, unwavering, urging yet reassuring. David exhaled slow, the first breath of a struggle known only to the broken and hopeful. With a hesitant hand, he reached for another photo, a small, candid scene of a younger him, laughing beside an unknown companion, their faces alive with a brotherhood unspoken but deeply felt. In that quiet moment, the attic felt less like a crypt and more like a sanctuary of unseen possibilities lurking beneath the dust and shadows. Outside, the dying light dipped below the gabled roof, the long shadows folding the day into night as an old house waited quietly for the secrets buried within. The attic door creaked softly behind David as he leaned against its worn frame, the stale dust swirling faintly in the slanting afternoon light. Buddy, ever alert, paced beside him, his nose twitching, ears flat with concern. The dog's movements were a quiet pulse against the deep thrum of David's turmoil, filling the silence with a restless presence that demanded attention. David wiped his hands on the faded sleeves of his military jacket, the fabric rough but familiar, a tangible link to a life that felt both distant and hauntingly close. His eyes, dark and distant, flickered to the ceiling beams, each crack and knot a silent testament to years of stories and secrets smeared into the grain. He drew in a breath, shallow, uneven. The weight of the photos pressed heavy in his chest, not just paper and ink, but shards of a past he had tried so hard to forget. A faint, bitter smile touched his lips, quickly swallowed by the knot forming in his throat. The last phone call with his son replayed like a broken film reel, words left hanging, sharp and unhealed. The widening gap between them felt like an open wound, raw and unforgiving. Buddy nudged his hand again, warm and insistent, disrupting the slow spiral of self-recrimination. David's fingers twitched but hesitated, the barrier between desire and dread brittle but unyielding. Silence stretched taut, broken only by the creak of the attic floor and the distant chirp of cicadas outside. The light dimmed as clouds drifted across the sun, shadows pooling at David's feet like the doubts threatening to drown him. He crouched, gathering a handful of photos, some edges curled, faces blurred by time, others unnervingly clear. His gaze lingered on the faces, echoes of camaraderie, moments of joy now tinged with a sorrow unspoken. Each had a story he hadn't dared to face. Was it all just a lie? The whisper escaped, raw and ragged, more to the room than to Buddy. The dog's amber eyes met his with steady loyalty, unshaken acceptance unburdened by memory or regret. David swallowed hard, the walls closing in, yet somewhere deep beneath the rubble of despair, a faint ember flickered, a fragile pulse of something unbroken, a tether to the hope buried beneath the dust. A sudden movement at the edge of his vision, a photo half hidden beneath the others, catching the light with a strange insistence. He reached out, heart tight. Buddy's bark was sharp, urgent, a warning carried on the quiet breeze sneaking through a cracked window. David held the photograph up, the figure in it obscured by shadow but strangely familiar. The room held its breath, the past whispering promises of truths just beyond reach. In that held moment, the attic seemed less a tomb and more a threshold. Somewhere between fear and resolve, David felt the fragile stirrings of a journey that had just begun. The attic hung in an uneasy stillness, shadows stretching long and thin as the fading daylight waned. Dust motes drifted lazily in the amber beams slicing through the cracked window, settling like fragile memories on the rough wooden floorboards. David's hands hovered above the scattered photographs, a silent war waging behind his eyes. The weight of years pressed not only on his shoulders but deep within his chest, a friend and foe entwined in battle. Buddy's soft growl broke the thick silence, the dog's nose nudging insistently at David's forearm. The lively eyes of his companion seemed to pierce the veil of self-doubt, whispering truths David was hesitant to acknowledge. Reluctantly, fingers curled around the edge of a particularly worn photo partially hidden beneath the others, the texture rough beneath his skin, a tactile invitation he could no longer ignore. The photograph unfolded in his mind's eye like an old film reel, his younger self, adorned in uniform, standing shoulder to shoulder with figures indistinct yet familiar. Faces blurred by time, but the ghost of camaraderie shimmered beneath the dust. Buddy's quiet presence grounded him, a tether to reality amid the haunting swirl of past and present. The stale air filled with the subtle scent of aged paper and faint leather, redolent of eras long gone yet whispering endlessly in the corners of this room. David's breath hitched, the raw edge of loss cutting clean through the fog of shame. Yet beneath the ache, a fragile ember sparked an elusive promise that somewhere beneath layers of regret and silence lay connection and healing. He knelt slowly, carefully preserving the fragile ecosystem of memories scattered before him. Fingers traced a partial date scratched faintly on the back, a silent marker challenging him to unlock its story. The past beckoned with a mix of menace and mercy, its shadows woven with light. Outside, the wind rose, threading through the eaves with a mournful song. The afternoon dimmed, shadows deepening into the blue of approaching night. Yet within, the glow of a small lantern flickered against the encroaching darkness, casting gentle pools of warmth across the ephemeral gallery of images. David's distant gaze shifted to the attic's horizon, where beams intersected like silent guardians standing vigil over his unfolding journey. His heart tightened, not with surrender, but with the tentative resolve of a man beginning to face the unspeakable. In that quiet encounter, beneath the watchful eyes of photographs and the tender insistence of a loyal companion, the fragile threads of his story began to weave anew. The past was no longer a prison, it was a key. Outside, the final sliver of sun dipped below the lacework of bare branches, painting the sky with streaks of bruised purple and gold. David tucked the photo close, his fingertips lingering on the worn corners as if memorizing the touch of hope itself. The attic door creaked open softly in the dusk light, the whisper of possibility carried on Buddy's eager bark. In that charged air, the journey began, the crossing from silence into story, from isolation toward a fragile light just beyond the shadows. The morning light seeped quietly through the attic window, casting long, warm fingers onto the scattered photographs spread across the worn wooden floor. The shadows of dust motes glowed softly, catching in the golden light like tiny suspended memories. David knelt among them, his rugged fingers trembling slightly as he lifted each photo, his gaze drawn deeper into the faded images, the silent echoes of a life once lived, now calling out with urgent softness. Buddy, his loyal companion, sat nearby, muscles tense, eyes sharp and probing. The dog's breathing was steady, but there was an unmistakable alertness beneath the Surfacean intuition finely tuned to unspoken truths. Every now and then, Buddy's nose twitched, directing David's attention to a particular image, a detail he might otherwise have missed. David reached for a weathered photograph revealing the blurred faces of soldiers beneath a foreign sun, the stark light and heavy midday heat mirroring the sweat and fear etched into his memories. His jaw clenched as a wave of disquiet washed over him, the past bleeding into the present with relentless intensity. "Not yet," he whispered to Buddy, voice barely audible, a tremor of doubt threading through his words. But Buddy nudged the corner of a sepia-toned photo insistently, prompting David to pause. The man's face was obscured in shadow, yet David's eyes narrowed. Something about the silhouette stirred recognition deep within him. He held the photo closer, breath hitching with the faintest thrill of connection. The tension in the cramped attic was palpable, carried in the quiet rustle of paper and the low whine of unease beneath Buddy's fur. David's mind flickered between the safety of denial and the sharp pull of curiosity, the morality of facing truths that could unravel fragile peace. He glanced up sharply as a sudden creak echoed from the far corner of the room. Buddy's snarling broke the fragile stillness. The dog's body tensed, hackles rising, as he fixated on the shadows just out of the dim circle of light. "Easy, boy," David murmured, his voice a thin veil over the spikes of fear stabbing his heart. His eyes scanned the dusty attic, seeking the source of unease. The pulse of the past beat strongly here. Memories pressed in, haunting and merciless. Yet beneath it all, a new resolve stirred, a tentative promise that the journey, no matter how painful, was necessary. David straightened, the familiar weight of adversity settling deep in his bones, yet tempered by the first flickers of determination. The cold light from the window sharpened as clouds rolled away, unveiling the sun's golden promise. The attic, once a shadowed mausoleum of forgotten time, was waking with him. He leaned down, gathering the photographs with newfound intention, the dog's steady presence a balm to the raw ache inside. As he returned his gaze to the collection, a particularly vivid image caught Buddy's fierce attention, a glaring contrast in the sepia palette, a detail that would not be ignored. The specter of a familiar face, obscured moments ago, now emerged with startling clarity. David's breath caught a silent question poised on the edge of discovery. Outside, the world held its breath in the gentle morning, the promise of revelation lingering in the warm light creeping across the attic floor. The afternoon deepened the attic's shadows, filtering through the weathered panes with a pale, dying light. David sat hunched over the fragile photographs, each image a ghost that whispered and wove around his thoughts, stirring unearthed memories of camaraderie and conflict, peace shattered and barely held. Buddy lay close by, restless, eyes flicking toward the door as if sensing distant threats lingering beyond the silent walls. David's hand trembled slightly as he reached for a photo tucked beneath Anothera group shot of familiar faces under a foreign sun. But as his thumb traced the worn edges, a shiver of unease cut through the creeping calm. In the corner, faint but sharp, was a figure partially erased by time, yet unmistakably present. His heart clenched. Recognition teased at the edges, an ally or an adversary lost to the passage of years. The dog's hackles rose suddenly. A low growl rumbled from Buddy's throat as his gaze locked on the attic door. David's breath caught. The subtle disturbance sharpened his senses. Shadows lengthened, and the room's temperature seemed to drope, a forewarning carried in the stale attic air. Footsteps echoed faintly below, off rhythm and deliberate. A cautious silence followed, but the unease lingered, knotting tight. David's fingers tightened around the photos. Buddy shifted to stand, ears pricked, muscles taut. His instincts were a low thrum against David's growing dread. "Who's there?" David called softly, voice rough, bearing the weight of old fears. No answer came. Only the creak of floorboards responding to the retreating steps. A flash of movement caught David's eye, just beyond the doorframe, a shadow slipping into the fading light. His pulse quickened. He rose slowly, heart pounding, eyes scanning the dim room strewn with the past. Each photo now seemed to pulse with a new urgency, secrets pressing, tightening like a noose. The friendly warmth of memories was challenged by a cold, creeping suspicion. Buddy circled David, nose skimming along the scattered papers as if searching for a scent, an unseen marker of intrusion. The dog's restlessness was a stark contrast to the tense stillness hanging in the attic. David swallowed hard and picked up the photo Buddy had so fervently marked earlier, the one with the mysterious figure. His breath hitched, the face that had once been shadowed now eerily clear, an unknown man with piercing eyes that seemed to bore into David's soul, unearthing more questions than answers. A tremor of recognition crossed David's mind, tangled with the storm of his own fragmented memories. This was not just an image. It was a summons, a shadow from the past demanding reckoning. He sank back into the chair, the weight of revelation pressing down painfully. The warmth of the fading day was eclipsed by an encroaching chill, like the breath of ghosts once hidden who now roamed unchecked. David's gaze shifted toward Buddy, whose amber eyes held fierce loyalty but also unvoiced warnings. "Who was he?" David mumbled. "And what do you think he's still doing here?" Outside, a heavy gust rattled the attic window, sending a cascade of dust swirling through the beam of light, a tangible whisper of the storm brewing, both beyond and within. The fragile thread of calm snapped, replaced by an ominous uncertainty that crept beneath his skin. The photographs, once windows to memory, now felt like mirrors reflecting not only the past, but the looming shadows yet to be faced. As thunder murmured in the distance, David realized the journey had shifted from discovery to confrontation. The mystery of the photographs was no longer just a matter of remembrance, but a battle between what was revealed and what had long lurked in the darkness. The attic, with its brittle light and unsettled air, held its breath, waiting with him. And as the storm clouds massed, David understood that the past was not done with him yet. The room sagged beneath a heavy silence, broken only by the soft rustle of photographs shifting beneath David's trembling fingers. The attic, once suffused with the warm golden light of discovery, had dimmed into a pale, gray shadow, a air thick with dust and secrets refusing to be buried. The dog, Buddy, paced restlessly beside him, nose low to the ground, sensing the tension bending the quiet. A particular photo lay before David, cradled in worn hands, the edges curled, colors faded, but the image unsettling in its clarity. It was more than a fragment of memory. It was a key to something long concealed. Time had not softened its truth. Instead, it bore down like a relentless weight. David's eyes traced the faces caught in the grainy black and white friends, family, Ali Sand, then, unmistakably, a shadowed figure whose presence whispered contradiction and betrayal. His own younger self stood in the frame, smiling, unaware of the ancestral storm waiting to shatter illusions. A sudden faint creak caused David to look up, heart hammering. The attic door barely moved, as if breathed upon by an unseen hand. Buddy growled low, amber eyes fixed on the threshold, muscles coiled like a spring. The dog's instincts were a tremor of warning. There was more to these photos than simple nostalgia. They were a prison and a promise. A secret intertwined with David's family, torn between loyalty and ruin. As fingers skittered over the brittle paper, an unexpected name surfaced, a revelation indelibly linking the photographs to a family scandal that stained not just a lineage but the essence of identity itself. Pain surged like a fist to David's chest. The betrayal resonated, gnawing at the fragile bond he thought unbreakable. Why was this hidden? He whispered to the shadows, voice ragged, the question as much a confrontation as a lament. The air grew heavier, charged with the knowledge that truth was no salve, but a wound demanding reckoning. As rain began to tap sharply on the attic window, streaks of water blurring the past and present, David's gaze fell again on the bracelet, a sliver of silver chain catching what little light remained. The bracelet, a symbol of connection to family, now bore the cruel irony of secrets and silence. Fingers closed around it tightly, anchoring him even as the ground beneath seemed to shift. Outside, a storm gathered, distant thunder rolling beneath the echo of unsettled memories. The fury mirrored David's inner turmoil, a tempest rising between the need to forgive and the urge to shield the broken pieces of his soul. In the hush between the crackling lightning, a voice emerged from the past, faint but insistent, entwined in the photograph's silent testimony. The choice was clear yet shattering: face the darkness and risk destruction, or retreat into the fragile safety of denial. David exhaled slowly, the weight of legacy and loss settling across his shoulders. He glanced at Buddy, whose steadfast gaze offered no judgment, only unspoken solidarity. "We can't turn away," David said, voice steadying though heavy with pain. "Not this time." Lightning flashed, illuminating the attic with stark clarity, revealing not just the outlines of the photographs but the outlines of a new, perilous path. The secret was no longer buried. It demanded to be confronted. And with that confrontation came the fracturing of old certainties, propelling David toward the abyss where only truth could offer redemption or ruin. The attic held its breath as the storm raged outside, dusk folding into night, the stage set for a reckoning that would carve the path forward, no matter the cost. Rain battered the roof of the old house, the relentless drumming sound syncing with the pounding ache in David's chest. The attic, once a place of tentative discovery, was now a cavern of shadows and memories too heavy to bear. The photo album lay open on the floor beside him, pages smudged and curling images bleeding into one another as if the past itself blurred beneath his faltering grasp. David sat crumpled against the weathered oak wall, his back bowed under the invisible weight of years and secrets. His graying hair clung damply to his forehead, beads of rain seeping through cracks in the roof, cold droplets tracing paths down his worn military jacket. The lights from the street below flickered faintly through the attic window, throwing fractured patterns like distant stars swallowed by a suffocating fog. Buddy hovered nearby, restless yet careful, his amber eyes reflecting worry that words could not form. The dog's presence was a lifeline tethered to a man sinking deeper into isolation. David's gaze was hollow, fixed on a photo face down in the shadows, a younger self smiling candidly with a man whose identity now seemed a cruel riddle. That image had become the axis of his unraveling, a stark reminder of a bond severed by truths too painful to unveil. His breath came shallow, ragged, as a silent tempest churned beneath the surface, threatening to break free. He whispered, voice fragile and distant. "Maybe I was never meant to fix this." Silence swallowed his words, the only response the creaking bones of the house and the soft whine of the storm outside. The air was thick, stifling, the oppressive weight of regret a tangible presence pressing into every corner. Every familiar sound, the tapping of rain against the windowpane, Buddy's occasional whimper, the distant rumble of thunder felt amplified in the quiet, magnifying the desolation that had crept into the spaces between heartbeats. David curled further into himself, a retreat not just from the storm without but from the gale of memory and guilt swirling within. His thoughts spiraled, faces blurred by time, lives intersecting and fracturing in the delicate balance of trust and betrayal. The recent estrangement from his family loomed large, a chasm carved by silence thicker and colder than any winter wind. Outside, the tempest swelled, slamming against the attic walls as though the heavens themselves mourned alongside him. David's eyes fluttered shut, tears mingling with the dampness on his cheeks, a quiet surrender to the crushing despair that seemed to seep from the very walls. Buddy nudged closer, warm and unrelenting, a flicker of life in a room shadowed by loss. But the man recoiled, the fragile heartbeat of hope faltering beneath the endless weight of past mistakes and unspoken fears. In that dim, oppressive cavern of memory and rain, the threads of connection frayed dangerously thin. The attic exhaled a mournful sigh, stretching its silence long and deep into the storm's mercy. And David, lost within, teetered on the edge of desolation, the light behind his eyes dimming, threatening to flicker out completely. The house breathed a cold, unwelcoming sigh as David lingered in the dim hallway outside the attic. The shadows clung tighter here, spilling from corners like a thick fog that seeped into bones and thoughts. He leaned against the peeling wallpaper, gripping the edges with fingers that trembled not from cold, but the weight inside. Buddy sat rigid at his feet, silent but watchful, the soft pad of his breath the only sound in the oppressive stillness. The dog's eyes reflected an ancient wisdom, a fierce loyalty tethered to a man unraveling thread by fragile thread. David's gaze drifted upward to the attic door closed, immovable, a barrier between truth and torment. Behind that door lay the fragile photos, secrets wrapped up in dusty frames and faded faces that had begun to unravel everything he thought he knew. The cold draft that slipped beneath the threshold carried the faint scent of forgotten dreams, mingled with stale dust and lost regrets. The chill bit into David's skin, the tangible ache of isolation. His breath caught as memory crashed forward, the strained farewell with his son, the echo of bitterness and distance that neither time nor silence had healed. The raw pulse of disconnection throbbed beneath his ribs, raw and relentless. A sudden flicker of movement caught his eye. Buddy rose, head low, ears flattened, emitting a low growl that vibrated like a warning lost in the bones. In that moment, David felt not protection, but the fragility of their shared existence, two souls tethered by silent fear and unwavering devotion. He sank down onto the cracked wooden floor, lean frame folding inward like a fragile bird with broken wings. The bracelet on his wrist, once a thread connecting him to his past and lineage, felt alien and heavy, an emblem of a heritage now entangled in shadows and silence. His fingers brushed the cold metal absently, the locket dangling open empty. That empty space mirrored the vast hollowness expanding inside him, a silent testament to loss and fractures too deep to mend in the dark. The storm outside roared to a crescendo, rain punctuating the night with hammering insistence against rusted nails and weathered shingles. Thunder rolled like a dirge, the sound vibrating through the walls and into the cavern of his heart. The attic lamp flickered, sputtered, and dimmed, plunging the room into near-complete darkness, save for the weak glimmers of lightning outside. Those sporadic flashes cast sharp, unsettling shapes, ghosts of the past dancing cruelly on the walls. David's eyes, reflecting the storm's stark brightness, glazed with unshed tears. The silence around him deepened, folding into a black void that swallowed hope and whispered surrender. His voice, a ragged shadow, broke the quiet. "Maybe this is all there is." No answer came. Only the soft panting of Buddy, unwavering and steady, a tether in the void. David closed his eyes, surrendering to the absolute stillness, a silent reckoning with a despair so pure it consumed all noise, all light. In that engulfing darkness, as rain hammered the roof in merciless rhythm, a heart ceased its fight. The man was lost in the storm of his own memories, trembling on the edge of oblivion. The house exhaled a breath long held, the echoes of past ghosts fading into a profound, suffocating silence. The dawn was a pale promise beyond the attic window, thin and uncertain, as if the world itself hesitated to awaken alongside David. The room was steeped in silence, heavy with the residual weight of night's despair. David lay curled on the floor, the cold wood biting through the thin soles of his sneakers, his breath shallow, tremulous rhythms echoing against the fragile walls. Buddy nestled close, a warmth amid the darkness, his steady heartbeat a tether to something not yet lost. The dog's paws rested gently on David's arm, a quiet insistence, an unyielding presence against the encroaching void. David's eyes fluttered open to the fading stars, their faint light flickering like distant flames struggling to endure. A fragility hung in the air, the lingering scent of old paper and rain-soaked memories mingling with the dust and shadows. He reached out, fingers brushing against the scattered photographs, his hands stained with footprints of pain and moments of forgotten grace. One photo, crumpled and blurred at the edges, caught his attention. Its image was a younger version of himself, framed by the smiling face of a man he had believed lost forever. The old bracelet, a loop of silver worn smooth by time and touch-clattered from his wrist, tumbling to the floor with a hollow sound. The locket lay open beside it, its cavernous emptiness suddenly full of unspoken possibilities. Buddy's soft bark shattered the quiet, a gentle summons toward reality. David's gaze lifted, meeting the dog's amber isurgent, knowing a flicker of trust bridging the gulf of silence. The attic light shifted, a warm glow seeping through, as the fragile threads of courage wove tentatively through the haze of despair. It was faint, a spark easily snuffed, but it was there. In that whispered moment, David inhaled deep, tasting the raw edges of hope mingled with fear. His voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper. "Maybe it's not over." The house seemed to breathe with him, its walls tumbling, shadows dissolving into gentle illumination. Outside, the first birds stirred, their calls ringing clear and crisp, a herald of renewal rising from the depths of night. David shifted, the weight in his chest loosening just slightly, the path forward grim but no longer impossible. Buddy licked his hand, the contact a balm, a reminder that the bonds of loyalty and love could withstand the darkest storms. The photo in his hand was a silent thread connecting past and present, loss and hope, despair and the possibility of redemption. It whispered to him, urging a step beyond the precipice toward the light hidden beneath the surface. And so, as dawn cracked gently over the landscape, David rose on unsteady legs, carrying with him the fragile ember of resolve, the first breath of a new chapter unfolding beyond the shadows. The first golden light of early morning crept stealthily into the attic, bathing the space in a warm glow that seemed to chase away the thick shadows of months past. David sat cross-legged on the cold wooden floor, eyes softened yet alert as he carefully picked through the fragile photographs spread before him. Each image told a story, not just of distant days but of wounds still raw, eyes not quite closed, silence echoing too loud in the empty spaces between. Buddy, ever vigilant, lay curled at David's feet, ears twitching with subtle awareness. The dog's steady breathing was both a comfort and a reminder, a pulse of life in a room weighed heavy with stillness. Sometimes Buddy would glance up, his eyes shimmering with quiet encouragement, urging David forward without words. David paused before a particular photo. The faded face of a young man, vibrant and hopeful beneath the harsh sun of a foreign shore. The weight of years hung between the light and dark in the image, shadows of fear and brotherhood stitched into every crease and fold. His fingers traced the blurred edges, lips parting in a breath of remembrance. Outside, the wind whispered in the trees, carrying scents of damp earth and freshly turned soil. The sudden chirp of a bird shattered the quiet, a fragile harbinger of renewal weaving into the old house's timbre. He exhaled slowly, the tightness in his chest loosening just a fraction. Maybe we can make this whole again," he murmured to Buddy, voice rough yet tinged with hope. The afternoon sun filtered through the cracked attic window, dust dancing in the beams like tiny beacons of light, scattering warmth across the worn floorboards. The house seemed to breathe with him, exhaling decades of silence and tension into the mellow air. David gathered the photos, his movements measured but purposeful, fading hesitation giving way to a fledgling resolve. The journey ahead was uncertain, fraught with shadows from the past, but for the first time, the path seemed illuminated by a fragile light. He looked to the corner where the family album lay closed, a book heavy with stories yet untold. The weight of that volume no longer threatened to crush but beckoned gently, an invitation to confront and unravel the tangled threads of truth. The familiar clink of the silver bracelet against his wrist offered a steady rhythm, a heartbeat threading through the quiet, binding past and present. It was more than a token. It was a silent vow whispered across generations, a call to meet the ghosts with courage. David rose, the stiffness of fatigue balanced by the clarity in his eyes. Buddy scrambled to his feet, tail wagging with renewed energy, a loyal sentinel ready to face the unknown. At the threshold of the attic door, David glanced back once more, the room now a sanctum of fragile hope rather than a cavern of despair. The sun cast long, golden shadows through the doorway, painting promise in the dust. He stepped forward, the first true steps of a journey toward healing, small, tentative, but irrevocable. Light blossomed in the quiet space, a fragile dawn breaking beyond the darkness, heralding a transformation still unfolding. The sun had dropped lower behind the dense canopy of trees surrounding the old house, casting long shadows that flickered like restless spirits along the cracked walls of the attic. David's hands moved with a newfound steadiness as he rifled through the scattered photographs, his eyes sharp and searching for the pieces of a shattered past he was now determined to restore, not just for himself, but for the family he had too long abandoned. Buddy remained at his side, alert and watchful, his keen eyes scanning the dim corners of the room with unwavering loyalty. At times, the dog's low growl filled the silence, a primal warning threading through the quiet, signaling that not all truths would come easily. David's breath hitched as he reached for a particular photo Buddy had circled with a gentle nudge, earlier a haunting image that felt both familiar and foreboding. The face of a man, partially obscured by shadow, stared back at him with sharp, unreadable eyes. The recognition was not immediate, but it sent a shudder through the dusty air, pricking at the edges of memory. His fingers lingered on the photo, the rough texture of the paper grounding him in a moment thick with tension. This was no longer a passive reckoning. David knew he had to confront what was hidden not just in the images, but within himself. As he turned the photo over, a creak from the attic doorway froze him. Buddy's ears pinned back, a low growl rumbling like distant thunder. The door creaked wider, revealing a figure poised in the fading light, a man whose gaze could have shattered stone. "David," the stranger said, voice smooth but edged with threat, "some doors, once opened, cannot be closed." David's pulse thundered in his ears, but beneath the storm of fear, a resolute calm took root. He met the man's gaze evenly, no longer a haunted specter but a man standing firm amidst the ghosts. "You think that scares me?" David's voice was low, steady, threaded with the rough timbre of survival. "I've lived with the darkness long enough. It's time to bring it into the light." The tension coiled taut as the two men measured one another, shadows flickering across their faces like the shifting truths between them. Buddy stepped forward, his body a living shield between David and the unknown, teeth bared in warning. Suddenly, the dog lunged not fiercely, but with calculated precision, biting at the stranger's wrist. A sharp cry broke the stillness. David seized the moment, grabbing the man's arm, forcing him back toward the ladder. The stranger stumbled, caught off guard by the alliance of man and beast, and fled down the steps of the attic, leaving behind a cup of trembling air and the echo of unresolved questions. David exhaled, the rush of adrenaline fading, but his resolve crystallized. He looked down at Buddy, eyes reflecting gratitude and unspoken understanding. "We're not done," David murmured, voice heavy with newfound purpose. "Not by a long shot." The fading light outside spilled through the attic window, washing the room in a soft, golden glow of fragile dawn breaking through the long night of fear and silence. Dust particles caught the light, twirling gently in the warm air as if applauding the silent vow. David gathered the photographs close, the weight of their stories no longer burdensome but a compass guiding him forward. Amidst the lingering tension, the attic seemed to breathe with possibility, the shadows yielding to a tentative light, a promise that even in the darkest corners, courage could kindle hope. In that quiet, suspended moment, David understood the journey ahead would demand everything he had, but for the first time, he faced it with a heart ready to fight, a mind clear and unyielding. The attic door stood open, the world beyond waiting, a chapter begun, filled with peril and promise alike. And so, beneath the gentle gleam of the setting sun, man and dog stepped forward together into the unfolding mystery, each stride an echo of redemption whispered through the dust and light. A quiet dawn broke over the old family home, suffusing the rooms with gentle light that crept slowly through the windows like the first whisper of redemption itself. David stood by the attic window, the same place where so much pain had been unearthed, where shadows had once threatened to swallow him whole. Now, those shadows seemed to retreat, edged with golden hues that promised transformation rather than fear. Buddy rested at his feet, the dog's steady breathing a grounding rhythm beneath the swelling light. The weight of months of turmoil and truth had lifted, tempered by the courage born from facing his haunted past, a past now unfolding into something new. In David's hands, the photo album lay closed but whole, its leather spine softened by gentle use, no longer just a repository of secrets but a vessel of healing. The worn silver bracelet glistened against his skin, its once cold metal now warm and charged with new meaning, a symbol of connection to the lineage he had both battled and embraced. As the sun cast vibrant beams across the attic's time-worn floor, David's eyes, once distant and haunted, now sparked with fierce clarity. He had stepped beyond despair into resolve, his scars a map of endurance, a testament to survival and compassion. The quiet creak of the family door drew his attention. His estranged brother, a man once locked in silence and suspicion, entered cautiously. His eyes held the flicker of reconciliation, tentative yet genuine. David met his brother's gaze steadily. "The past isn't perfect," he said, voice firm but respectful, "but it's ours. And it's time to honor it honestly. Together." The brother nodded slowly, an invisible barrier between them breaking in that single moment of shared vulnerability. Outside, the morning light spilled over the valley, igniting the hills with flame-like intensity. The rustic town, steeped in history and memory, responded in kind, streets and trees glistening as if cleansed by the transformative glow. David stepped down from the attic, his silhouette bathed in a warm embrace that spoke of hope renewed. Buddy trotted beside him, fiercely loyal, a living reminder that love and trust had survived the darkest storms. He paused at the porch, looking back once more not in sorrow but in understanding. The house, the photos, the battles within and without, had been not just trials but crucibles forging a new identity. His voice was soft, yet unshakable as he whispered into the still morning air, "This is who I am now. Whole and ready." The sun reached its zenith, pouring golden light over the world, a radiant promise of peace and justice earned. As David and Buddy moved down the garden path, the locket's gentle chime echoed, a delicate song of transformation and silent victory. And in that moment of luminous clarity, the past and future intertwined, heralding the final chapter of a journey marked by courage, redemption, and the enduring power of connection. The golden hour cast a tender glow over the quiet town, the light spilling softly through the windows of the old house. Inside, David sat on the creaking porch steps, a gentle breeze stirring his hair as he gazed at the horizon where the sky melted from amber to deep violet. The memories of turmoil and revelation had begun to settle, replaced by a quiet, persistent sense of peace and understanding he had long denied himself. In his lap rested a small leather-bound album, its edges worn by time, containing photographs that once seemed burdensome evidence of past wounds. Now, they were tokens of resilience, each image a testament to survival, to the scars and stories that formed the foundation of his new beginning. Buddy curled up beside him, content and watchful, the warmth of his body radiating comfort. The dog's eyes, now softer and more trusting, reflected the slow healing taking place in his human's heart. David's fingers brushed the album's cover, tracing the faint lines where stories had been written and erased, forging a delicate harmony from chaos. He closed his eyes briefly, breathing in the crisp, fresh air, an air infused with the scent of pines and distant rain. The storm that once threatened to destroy everything had passed, leaving behind a landscape renewed by the cleansing rain of truth. The storm within him had also subsided, replaced by a gentle acceptance of the past's lessons. As he sat in silence, a gentle smile crept across his face, a quiet acknowledgement that forgiveness, both of others and himself, was the final step in this journey. The photos, once symbols of pain, now shimmered with a luminous clarity, revealing connections and bonds that transcended shadows. David's gaze drifted to Buddy, whose faithful eyes met his own. A silent dialogue passed, a promise of companionship beyond hardship, a commitment to face whatever lay ahead with courage. The quiet strength of the moment was a testament to the power of resilience and reconciliation. He reached out and gently stroked Buddy's head, feeling the steady beat of his loyal friend's heart, a reminder that some bonds endured, unbreakable despite the weight of time and secrets. The horizon blazed with the last light of day, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold. The house, standing steadfast in the fading glow, symbolized the solid ground beneath the turbulent waters of his past. He finally understood that peace was not the absence of struggle, but the acceptance of it, embracing both the pain and the hope intertwined. A deep breath etched in quiet resolve, David leaned back as an owl's distant call echoed softly across the evening. The stars began to emerge, delicate points of light shimmering like distant promises. The world held its breath in a moment of perfect stillness and eventual peace born from facing the shadows and forgiving their hold. In this tranquil light, the journey was no longer a battle but a quiet acceptance, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the dawn of true reconciliation. The night approached gently, a comforting veil over the house and the man who had finally begun to find his way home. The final rays of sunset poured a warm amber over the landscape, casting long shadows that danced softly across the worn paths leading to the modest house. Inside, David sat quietly in his favorite chair, the old photo album resting open on his lap. The images that once haunted him now shimmered with a gentle, forgiving light, each one a piece of his fractured soul slowly mended. He traced the faint outlines of faces in the photos, faded but enduring, recognizing not just the people, but the echoes of kindness, betrayal, loss, and love. His fingers lingered on a picture of himself as a young soldier, the innocence still etched into his eyes, the weight of unspoken memories pressing against his chest. Buddy curled beside him, a steadfast presence that had become his anchor throughout this tumultuous journey. The dog's soft breathing, rhythmic and grounding, reminded David of the loyalty and resilience woven into their shared story. For a moment, silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken forgiveness and newfound understanding. David gently closed the album, a faint smile touching his lips. Tears welled in his eyes, a mixture of grief and gratitude, transforming turmoil into quiet acceptance. He looked up at the fading light through the window, the sky now a canvas of deep violet and soft gold. The house, once a prison of secrets, stood peacefully amidst the changing sky, a testament to resilience, to healing earned through facing frightening truths. With deliberate calm, David reached for Buddy, pulling him close. Their bond, a simple yet profound act, bridged the gaps of pain and silence that had haunted him for so long. He rose slowly, walking to the doorway and pausing, taking one last look at the framed photos that told his story. A deep breath settled into his lungs, and he whispered softly, "Peace at last." His voice, steady and unwavering, carried a weight of forgiveness, hope, and renewal. The camera lingered on the doorway as the light dimmed, the house settling into the quiet of dusk. Outside, the stars began to emerge, tiny points of hope piercing the night, silent witnesses to a soul fully begun to heal. In that moment of tranquil reflection, the narrative reached its poetic climax, an affirmation that even in the deepest shadows, light persists, and through facing the truth, one finds the way home. The scene unfolds in the golden hush of dusk, a gentle wind stirring the leaves and whispering softly in the old trees. The house stands quiet, bathed in the tranquil amber light of sunset, its windows glowing with a warm, forgiving hue, kind of light that beckons peace after long years of turmoil. Inside, David and Buddy sit on the porch, wrapped in a shared silence that speaks volumes. The weathered photographs lie in front of them, their edges softened by age but their images filled with a new understanding, each a chapter of resilience, forgiveness, and connection. David's fingers traced the contours of the familiar yet changed face on the latest photo, the one he thought lost, now a symbol of reconciliation. His eyes, once haunted by shadows, gleam with quiet acceptance, a deep wellspring of peace emerging from the depths of memory. The breeze carries distant sounds, the chirping of crickets, a solitary bird's song fading into the timeless rhythm of the settling evening. The sky deepens into shades of lavender and rose, a poetic canvas stretching across the horizon, signifying renewal. He takes a slow, deliberate breath, the cold air filling his lungs and easing the last remnants of despair. The trembling tension of the past has given way to a serene calm. His hand lingers briefly over Buddy's fur, feeling the steady, calming warmth and unspoken promise of loyalty, of enduring bonds unbroken by time or secrets. As the light dims and stars twinkle softly above, David gently closes the album, a gesture of tender closure. The house, once a repository of pain and hidden truths, now feels like a haven restored, whole, and waiting. The camera pulls away slowly, capturing the tranquil scene, an old man and his loyal dog, wrapped in the gentle glow of twilight, faces peaceful and eyes shining with quiet wisdom. The silence stretches a luminous pause in the symphony of life, each a testament to the journey of facing shadows, embracing truths, and finally, discovering peace. The scene fades into the fading light, a reminder that, even in silence, hope endures, an eternal testament to resilience and renewal. The world holds its breath, silent witness to a story of redemption now at peace, a silent prayer in the quiet dusk. What secret would your attic reveal? Share your thoughts below.